Hey guys, so I'm looking at Ophelia's monologue, "Oh my lord, I have been so affrighted" today, and I mentioned in my other video that I'm splitting this breakdown into two videos. In the first video, I looked at the acting choices, some of the context and how you can build your objective and given circumstances and really get into detail because it does need it in this monologue. And in this video, I'm going to do the line by line breakdown with your verse speaking technique and also some of the acting choices as well. So if you haven't seen that first video, it is linked below. You can watch it first or watch it after. It doesn't really matter, but do watch both if you can. So let's jump straight in. She starts with, "Oh my lord, I have been so affrighted." Now, first thing already in this line, there are a couple of things that Shakespeare is using in the language to give us clues as to how we could deliver it. Now, there are always choices, but here are some of the things that you could look at. Firstly, an O is often kind of guttural. It's more of a breath than a word, I guess, or a sound, a guttural feeling. And if you think about, she's potentially like run from another room, maybe far away, to come and talk to her dad about this. So the "oh my lord, actually might be her kind of getting her breath back. So it's more like, "Oh my lord," that kind of thing. So you can actually let it spill out of you. And as you do, you can also hit the word "so." Don't hit the word "been" so much. I personally want to always hit like, "I have been so affrighted," but actually you want, "I have been so affrighted," because of the rhythm. This is working from the iambic pentameter rhythm. But also that "so," if you elongate it, it also helps you with that breath. And anytime you're connecting to your breath, it's going to help you connect to emotion as well. And we need that in this monologue because she's freaked out. And it's hard to jump into that feeling just by, unless you're an amazing actor, which I bet you are. But if it's me, I want to use that breath. So I'm going to elongate. "Oh my lord, I have been so affrighted." And it helps me just access all that emotion straight away. Now, Polonius responds with "what in the name of God?" Now, if you cut this for a monologue, I still recommend taking a second to kind of gather yourself because she is about to describe something that happened and she is freaked out. So she's going to need to kind of gather herself for a second. So do give yourself that kind of beat. That first line is kind of a little unit, a little beat on its own. And then, "My lord, as I was sewing in my closet." Now, in the other video, I mentioned about being specific as to the images in your mind. Now, for closet, in those days, it was really like a private chamber. So for you, depending on kind of what era you're imagining or where you think you're living in your version, especially if you're doing it for an audition, you can decide, "Oh, I'm a modern Ophelia and I live in my house." And you need to think of somewhere that for you is private and also somewhere where you could relax. So she was in a private space and she was kind of just chilling out, doing her own thing, and Hamlet bursts in. So whatever you're imagining, make it something that relates in that way to you. Now we get into the kind of descriptions. I really recommend, as I mentioned in another video, start to get detailed about thinking, what exactly is he wearing? Because she's starting to describe what he looks like. So really do like paint a picture in your own mind or literally draw a picture of what you think he looked like so you can imagine it, because you have to really paint it for the person that you're speaking to. And you need to have in your mind exactly what that looks like. So I will try and break down for you basically a contemporary understanding of all these weird Elizabethan fashion things, and we'll do our best. And you might either decide that you're going to modernize it in your mind or you might keep it as is, but overall you want to get the sense of his the state of dress that he's in is a bit alarming. So Lord Hamlet with his doublet all unbraced. Now a doublet was like a sort of jacket that usually closed up and was quite well fitted. So he's kind of got his jacket open, which is pretty full on as it is. And remember that they used to be, fully covered. No hat upon his head. Now that it was actually normal for them to wear hats indoors. So it's not like she's outdoors or something. It's just that it was the fashion. And he, as a royal person, probably would have gone with the fashion a lot. So he would have, again, another thing that was making him look very disheveled, not coming to court her, but coming in an unusual way to visit her. His stockings fouled. Now this kind of creeps me out. So think about his stockings fouled. I always think it's really good to start thinking about perspective here. When she's looking at his fouled stockings, because that just means they're dirty. But dirty with what? What has he been doing? Like that, it's kind of freaky because normally they're not like out running around in the dirt. So she's going to be looking at him like, good God, what has this guy been doing? Has he been like running through the forest? He's covered in dirt. Or is it, like, not to be too gross, but is it bodily matter? Like on his stockings? Maybe. And she's, this is happening very fast for her. So she could be going through this in her mind like, good God, what is on this guy's stockings? And what is going on? Like, where has he been? What has he been doing? This is so not the Hamlet I know and not the prince that I know. Now next, ungartered and down jivered to his ankle. So that's how you pronounce that, jivered, just for the rhythm. Ungartered, it had like garters that held up their stockings. So his stockings had kind of come down to his ankles. Again, this is creepy, and honestly, like if you can imagine some dude bursting into your bedroom / living room when you're busy mind your own business, having like a nice time reading a magazine or whatever, this guy comes in with his shirt open and his pants down and his pants are covered in some sort of filth. This is scary, like for any woman ever, right? You need to decide, is she afraid he's going to hurt her? Honestly, it would be scary. And is she just worried for him because it looks strange? Or is she also worried for her? And these are the decisions that you need to make as an actor. So you decide, when he burst in on her, she felt like this. So even though she's telling the story of it happening now, she's going to be recalling those emotions to a certain extent. All these decisions that you make are going to layer on to make really, really specific acting, and it matters. Pale as his shirt, fairly self-explanatory. He looks very pale. His knees knocking each other. So interestingly, this is a funny one because she could be being a bit descriptive, like poetic with her description here, but also I've seen a really great version of Hamlet where he sort of, with his madness, started to get a little bit like loose in his body. So it actually, that might be that he's a little bit almost like dizzy. That might be what she's referring to there. But again, you make a decision because it is a kind of poetic description. People are not going to literally stand there and knock their knees together. So what does she mean there? You make the choice. Is it that he was wobbly? Was he cold? Was he, about to faint? Like, make the decision in your mind about what she was seeing and what she means. Make it specific for you. And with a look so piteous in purport, as if he had been loosed out of hell to speak of horrors, he comes before me. So I just run that together so you can kind of hear how it runs together. And what's going on there? So a look so piteous in purport. Purport just means like meaning or intention. So, and it's piteous is just pretty much what we know of as today. But I often find when they use the word piteous in Shakespeare, it can sometimes refer to making the other person feel pity. Not necessarily that they are pitying someone. So if she's describing Hamlet, it's probably more that she means that she felt pity for him. So this could be a shift. Does she now, when she sees this, suddenly go, oh, I'm not worried for me, I'm just worried for him? But let's also layer on here. He looks a bit like a ghost now. And this is kind of recalling the image of Hamlet's father as the ghost. Hamlet is now starting to take on this otherworldly shape to her, and anything kind of otherworldly freaked people out in those days. So maybe she is super, super freaked out. I'm not going to give you a definite yes or no because these things are big, and Ophelia is kind of mysterious. There's a lot to dig into. People don't always have exact answers, and I don't have exact answers for you, but I have offers. I want you to make a decision about these things. Really look at this part of the monologue, in fact, all of monologue, and decide, when was she freaking out and when did she just kind of feel sorry for him? Is she still freaking out right now as she's telling the story? or has she kind of calmed down? You really need to make clear decisions about what's the timeline here of her being like, I was freaked out and now I'm not. When did that shift? Or is she still freaked out? Hope that makes sense. It's tricky, and that's why I'm doing 2 videos. Now, the second part of the monologue, it becomes more active. So what he's doing is taking action. The first one is just her kind of seeing him and describing what he looked like. Now, as he starts to take action in her story, you have to think about how much am I literally going to act out what he's doing. And she does at one point, because she says, and with his other hand thus o'er his brow. So she's going to have to say, as she's saying thus o'er his brow, she's demonstrating. So let's just break those first bits down. He took me by the wrist and held me hard. Now, to me, it actually does make sense that she might be kind of holding her own wrist, whether she's demonstrating like, oh, he was holding me out like this. To me, I wonder, because he says he took me by the wrist, I suspect perhaps she was trying to get away, because that's the kind of position that you might be in if you were startled and he was catching her and maybe holding her in place. That's what I'm imagining. But again, you can make these decisions. This is my offering to you. Then goes he to the length of all his arms. So he's caught her, but then he sort of stands back because he wants to look at her, right? And with his other hand thus o'er his brow, he falls to such perusal of my face as he would draw it. So I'm imagining that he's kind of like looking at her face, like sort of like this, whether he's kind of shielding to look at her more closely, or whether it's one of those kind of holding my head moments. Again, you can choose, but just make sure it makes sense for you. And you are following what the text says, so you do have room to choose here. Perusal of my face as he would draw it just means that he was really studying her in detail, like he about to do a sketch of her. I feel like that's fairly self-explanatory, but maybe not. Long stayed he so. Now again, that's a half line, so you do usually want to put those together. So he falls to such perusal of my face as he would draw it. Long stayed he so. So don't have a big pause there. You usually don't have a big pause in the middle of any line when it's iambic pentameter, usually. Long stayed he so just means that he held her there for quite a while. But decisions. How long was it really? Be specific for you, because if you're freaked out and some dude has got you pinned and is like looking at your face, long stayed he so might have been 10 seconds, 30 seconds, or maybe it was longer. And if it's longer, why? Why did she let him? Was she trying to get away, or did she kind of look at him for an answer? Or is she just pitying him? If he managed to keep her for any length of time, there's something going on for her there. So you need to decide, what was it in that moment when he was looking at her? How did she feel? At last, a little shaking of mine arm, and thrice his head thus waving up and down. Now, so for that, I wonder again whether he's trying to pull her back, if she's kind of pulling her hand away. So maybe that's the shaking of the arm. Honestly, I'm a little bit at a loss as to why he would be shaking her arm. So if you have an answer for me, please drop it in the comments. But I think it's one that you can decide. Again, lots of decisions that you can make. For me, it makes more sense that he would be either kind of trying to pull her back into place, or otherwise maybe he's shaking her a bit, as in like trying to communicate with her, like trying to knock some sense into her, but like he would shake someone from the shoulders kind of thing. And thrice his head thus waving up and down. Now that suggests to me that he's nodding, but again, it kind of suggests that maybe that wobbliness that comes with the knees knocking. So whether I don't necessarily think he's like going like this, but it might be more like he's looking at her up and down, or maybe he's completely lost his sense of like balance or orientation. Make a decision for yourself. What is it? He raised a sigh so piteous and profound, as it did seem to shatter all his bulk and end his being. That done, he lets me go. So just again, running it together for you so you get a sense of how it ties in. You'll notice that I kind of gave a little bit of space at the ends of lines, and if there's a full stop in the middle of the line, I kept going there. This is a really good practice for iambic pentameter anyway. But if you don't feel right about sort of giving a bit of pause after profound, you can keep going, it's okay. But it's really great to lean into the words at ends of lines. This is a little tip on the fly of verse speaking technique. And again, the word piteous, a little clue there, I think. she is probably feeling sorry for him to a certain extent. This makes sense to me in terms of how she reacts to him later when she sees him next. She's a little bit cold, she's uncertain with him, but she doesn't behave the way that you would if you were seeing someone that you were afraid was going to assault you. My gut feel is that after some initial shock when he comes in, she's more worried about him than anything and freaked out, but not necessarily worried for her safety. That's my feeling. Again, please make your own decisions. Shatter all his bulk and end his being. I really think that this is a little bit of a call to some of the themes that pop up in Hamlet about things beyond the physical body. So shattering all his bulk, it's sort of like it went beyond him, and end his being. It's like when he had this huge sigh, it was like he was shaking off his physical self and accessing something beyond that. And there's a lot of that going on in Hamlet. So that's my take on that. That done, he lets me go. And with his head over his shoulder turned, he seemed to find his way without his eyes. Now, this sort of cracks me up a bit because it makes me think of one of those like melodramatic sort of soap opera moments where someone's like walking away, but they're still looking at you, but like, how do they not crash into things? So it's sort of, to me, a little bit comical, but also it's just dramatic. Thanks, Hamlet, being very dramatic. I'm leaving. For out of doors he went without their help, and to the last bended their light on me. So that just means he left without using the help of his eyes. So again, he's not looking where he's going. Again, I think she's a little bit creeped out by this. And to the last, which means to the last moment, bended their light on me means that he was fixated on her. I'm leaving. Creepy. I hope that's given you a lot to choose from, an idea of what he could have been doing, but it is very open, and it's unlikely that a director is going to be like, say to you, what do you think Hamlet was doing right this second? But if you don't choose, it will look unclear. So in your mind, you need to decide, he held me exactly here and I was up against a wall, or I was over here, I was on the couch, or I was standing up and I was about to run away. You decide, where were you physically? Even if you're not showing that literally to Polonius in your reenactment, you need to make all those decisions. It's kind of like two lots of decisions, as I talked about in the first video. So again, link is below if you want to watch that first video as well. It will help you understand a lot of what I'm talking about there in a bit more depth. And I hope that was helpful. As per usual, please give it a like if you found it useful. Subscribe if you love Shakespeare, and drop a comment if you've got a request of something you'd like me to break down for you. And good luck with all your auditions out there, and I'll see you next time.